One of the weird little things about Russia is most of their petrochemical facilities were built in the 60s under Khrushchev. And the only reason they're still operating is you've had a lot of Western technology and Western investment and Western workers basically applying a lot of high-end duct tape to keep it all working. And they are now all gone. And we are already seeing industrial accidents in Russian industry that are so big, not that we can see them from orbit, we can detect them from orbit. All right, what's next? What we're looking at here is a pipeline map. Specifically, we are looking at the green pipes. Those are the oil pipes, and the two arrows are pointing at a pair of ports, one on the Baltic Sea in the north, that is Primorsk, and one on the Black Sea in the south, that's Novorossiysk. And the reason that these really matter is insurance. And I can just see everybody like, work with me? It gets really sexy really fast. You cannot have a vessel go into a port, out of a port, or go through a constrained waterway like, say, Suez without an insurance policy. And as of the first of the year, the Europeans said, no ship can get one of their policies. That's 90% of global coverage. In addition, the global reinsurance companies, those are firms that insure insurance companies, without sanctions in play again, just said, we're never touching another Russian vessel again. Now, you're gonna see in the news things about the price cap. That's all wrapped up into this. And everyone talks about the price cap because, ooh, sexy, they can only get like $40, whatever. It's the insurance that really matters, and it's already gone. So we have seen in just the last week and a half, exports out of the Russian space drop by about 1.5 million barrels a day. Now, anything more than where we are now, that 1.5 million, things get really, really fast. Because this isn't Texas. In Texas, if for whatever reason the ports can't get rid of the crude, they just shut in the well. They don't like to do it, but they can do it. But in Russia, if you shut in a well in the permafrost, which is where most of this stuff comes from, it freezes solid. And the water that comes up as a byproduct turns into ice, and when water, we're in Louisiana, you're like, what? What's ice? It's like, when water freezes into ice, it expands and it pops the pipe from the inside. Now, they've got about 1.5 million barrels a day that's further west that's not on the permafrost. That they can turn on and off. Any more than that, they're cutting into the permafrost wells. And the last time the permafrost wells went offline, it was 1989, and the Soviet system collapsed, and they lost the entire network. And it took them 30 years to repair the damage. It's not quite right. It took Western techs 30 years to repair the damage, and the Western techs are gone. So we can very easily see a scenario where 2 to 4 million barrels a day of Siberian crude goes offline and does not come back for decades. And energy is not a normal product. You know, if you can't get wheat, you can eat corn. If you can't get corn, you can eat soy, whatever. If you can't get fuel, things stop. If you need a gallon of gas to get to work, but you can only get 9/10 of a gallon, not only will you pay whatever you have to do to get that last little bit, the price you pay for that determines the entire market. So just losing 2 million barrels a day of Siberian crude, you know, that's enough to jack energy prices up by $60, easily. And there's more where that came from. So remember, green's oil, right? We're now looking at the reds. The reds are natural gas. We're gonna start with that blue line. I'm sorry, that blue arrow at the top. That's the, noun failure, that's the Nord Stream pipeline. It's not the marginal supplier for the Germans, it's their primary, it's 40% of the total. So, you know, a 2% change in supplies can generate a 50% change in price. This is 40% of their total demand. And back in September, somebody blew it up. It's gone, it's not coming back, can't be repaired because there's now water corroding it from the inside. It's been too long. Americans talk a good game when it comes to paranoia about energy security. We're like, oh my God, energy independence, we gotta get it. We really don't care. We bring in energy from Canada or Mexico or Saudi Arabia, and if we don't think anyone is really watching all that closely, we'll happily take a bunch from Venezuela. You can't do that in Germany. Precision manufacturing in a tough neighborhood. And not only do they bring in the natural gas to generate power, that's not its primary use. Its primary use is for petrochemicals. And those petrochemicals are not exported. No. They're kept in-house to be processed into regular manufactured goods. It's the base of the entire system. And it stopped. Now they have replaced that 40% with 7 different marginal suppliers. And so prices are 6 and 7 times, as a rule, of what they were before the war. Now, if you've been following the news there recently, they're having a freakish heat wave in Germany too. It hit 50 degrees on New Year's in Berlin, which is like 185 billion degrees above normal. And so they're not using a lot of natural gas right now, and prices are really under control. But that's what it took. They shut down their industrial usage of the stuff. They halved their electricity generation. And it took a freak heat wave for them to get things back under control. And in order to do that, they only had to pay 7 times market price for the natural gas. Can you imagine what happens with a cold snap? And they're never going to refill with Russian natural gas again. They can't. Oh, and it'll get worse because those red arrows, that's the backup plan. Pipes that go through the conflict zone in an artillery war. Folks, if you want a Beamer, buy it now. This is the last model. You should probably get 10 years of parts too. But we're looking at the end of the German manufacturing system in less than 2 years. The closest natural gas to Germany that's not Russian is in Nigeria. That's a 15-year program at least to get it online in there. All right. Oh, this is fun. So Chairman Xi of the People's Republic of China, head of the Communist Party, has now consolidated more power unto his person than any human in history. More than Caligula of Rome, more than the Kim dynasty in North Korea, more than anyone at any time in any place. And as a result, things are breaking down. Even if he were the smartest person in human history, you can't manage a system of 1.5 billion people by yourself. And he has now executed the messenger so many times that no one wants to bring him any information. Not information that they think will piss him off, any information, because they don't know the status of the voices in his head, and they don't know what will trip him. So, great example. You guys remember last February? February before last? Sorry, New Year's, everything's fuzzy. February of 2021. The Chinese were experiencing rolling black and brownouts. Best guess is that Xi didn't find out until September. You know who told him? Joe Biden. On a phone call. Just came up in conversation. Now, we're in the South. I'm going to guess that there's some fairly well-formed opinions about Uncle Joe in this room. But do any of us know anyone who thinks of Uncle Joe as a source of breaking news? Last February, just before the Ukraine war started, during the Olympics, Putin was in town. And he lied to Xi's face. Xi asked him, are you going to invade Ukraine? And Putin was like, oh, why would I do that? It would be crazy. And you can see in the press conference, like the national security guys in the back of the room is like, I feel like I should. And the other guy's like, no, shut up. You know what happened to the last guy? And so Chairman Xi was the only world leader got caught completely with his pants down. He's bought into the Russian propaganda. And so he doesn't probably realize that they're about to lose a lot of Russian crude because of what's going on in the West with the sanctions. But he's also probably about to lose a lot of crude from eastern Siberia, because not one well in eastern Siberia was built by the Russians. It was all done by BP, Halliburton, and the rest, and they're all gone. We've never had this sort of technical pullback from an oil project anywhere in modern history. We don't know how long the Russians can keep this going. But since you can see the accidents from orbit, I'm going to guess not all that long. They're buying their own propaganda. Oh, let's talk about COVID. That's fun. Whee! Okay, I'm going to guess that we have been exposed in our personal and our professional lives to a diversity of thoughts on COVID. And I think most of them can roughly go into one of two buckets. So bucket one, natural immunity is the way out of this. Bucket two, vaccines are how we move on. But I think if we're all being really honest with ourselves, not each other, not with me, with ourselves, at home, in the dark, with the doors locked and the blinds pulled, alone, we will admit that there's some points on the other side of the discussion that are worth considering. Is that fair? Can't have that conversation in China. And not simply because it's an information-controlled area. The CCP was successful at keeping COVID out of the general population. No one has natural immunity.